The next thing I want to have a look at is the 6 stages of the digital communication process. So the first stage is to identify your target audience. Then you need to determine what your communication objective is. You need to create a digital media plan around that, work out what the digital message should be, execute the campaign, and then at the end of that, evaluate how effective that campaign was. When we're making choices about our digital media and we're working out what sort of mix of media we're going to have, there's sort of a number of things we need to go into. The first thing is look at our communications criteria. So we need to look at our behavioural objectives. What do we want people to do as a result of this communication? How much money have we got to spend? And which customer segments are we going to apply this to? The second thing to think about is the digital media criteria. So how will these particular different tools, these different media actually help us meet our objectives in terms of making people do something and changing their behaviour? We have to look at the cost as well associated with that. We have to look at our ability to reach certain market segments. So you have to choose media carefully depending on who you actually want to reach. When you're looking at the digital media mix, you have to consider what approaches you will use and fundamentally make a choice about the approach that's most appropriate. You have to allocate spending, and you might have to allocate spending across a series of different media. So for example, you might have to put some money towards search engine marketing, as well as pay for some pay-per-click, as well as pay for some viral campaigning, as well as pay for some banner ads. So you need to think about the most appropriate mix across time and think about how much money you want to spend within each of those. And in the end, you've actually got to put this into action and actually see whether these particular approaches will help you meet your marketing objectives. One of the things that people do is actually have a trial, see how a particular medium performs, and then report back to see whether that's the thing they should use in the long run. One of the things that's quite important to do is to think about how you do your media scheduling. One's instinct is to run an advert all through a year, but actually you might not do an advert from a sort of constant advertising perspective. You may only want to do your digital marketing at certain times of the year. So you might say we're going to have like 3 weeks at Easter, 3 weeks at summer, 3 weeks in the autumn, and 3 weeks at Christmas. Now that's okay, but then you have to think within each of those periods, is it going to be constant, or are you going to have a sort of varying of intensity? So for example, within each of those sort of periods, you might say we're going to do 3 weeks at Easter, but actually it's going to be Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Or you might say we'll do a lot of work over the 3 weeks at Easter, but actually it'll be at 10 o'clock at night every day, and we'll do nothing at 12 o'clock the next day. So you need to think about how you schedule the media as they turn up. It's kind of a tricky art, but it's built on experience that people have had from media scheduling in offline industries. One of the biggest questions that gets asked is how do you know what's best to do? And there are all sorts of arguments as to whether you should pay for a traditional cost per thousand model, where you know that your ad will be seen by 24 million people and you'll just pay a fee for that, or whether you should just pay for clicks. If you go for the old-fashioned traditional cost per thousand model, it's consistent with the way that the traditional marketing media are used to. So it's exactly the same model that's used for newspapers. What you do is you make organisations pay to put their message in front of customers, irrespective of the results that particular advert generates. So you might find that even though people don't click through, the kind of effect that has on, say, brand awareness might be really positive. People might not be buying anything from the actual advert itself, but they might actually be able to recall your advert later on. They might be thinking about you in an offline environment, and so that could be a very positive thing. The alternative that is performance-based pricing, and what we're finding is that people are resorting to this more, so that you can actually see and make adverts answerable in a way. You're making them pay their way. You're making advertisers and publishers talk in a way that means that you'll only pay for an advert that generates either a lead or a sale. And actually, performance-based pricing is becoming very, very common. if you look at the ads on the side of Google, they're all performance-based pricing models. You'll see the advert, but the advertiser doesn't pay unless you actually click on the advert. And again, that's great for generating awareness too, because if people don't actually click on it, they might be aware of you, but if they don't click on you, you've got an advert for free. On the other hand, they might click on your ad and then take no action at all, so you'll be paying for a lead that might not generate a sale at all, and that can be a problem. So the thing to think of next then is how we can integrate those levers across the 4 stages of the electronic relationship. So if we think about what happens at awareness, what are we trying to do? We're trying to make people aware of our organisation. So we might use some traditional offline methods such as TV, magazines, flyers, posters and billboards. And you'll find that in many stages of a digital marketing relationship, it's actually an offline trigger that causes the start of that electronic relationship. When we're moving into exploration and expansion, you'll see we might start things like, doing rich media ads on websites. We might do an email. We might send direct mails to people. It's only when we get commitment that we can start to do clever things relating to personalisation with personalised pages, personalised and permission-based emails, all those sort of things where it relies on actually knowing someone and being able to send them something personal and interactive. So there's quite a lot of things to think about, and what you really need to do is go off and explore each of the levers that you're thinking you might use, and think, where will I use that in the relationship? What are the advantages of using it at that point? And when people have gone through that particular digital communication lever, what does it lead to next? So think of it in terms of a voyage from A to B and all of the points in between.